This is the director's playbook.
Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today, we're tearing through a stack of sources focused on one of the most intellectually compelling directors working today, Christopher Nolan.
Absolutely. This is a filmmaker who doesn't just use time as like a backdrop.
Yeah.
He sees time itself as his ultimate subject, his central theme, really.
He actually called it the most cinematic of subjects, didn't he?
He did, yeah. And our mission today is to kind of break down his unique directorial playbook, how he manages to elevate the modern blockbuster, blending these really cerebral ideas with something incredibly tangible.
Right. So we're looking at this through three core ideas from the research: timeline, practicality, and identity.
Exactly. Those seem to be the pillars of his approach.
We're going deep into how he builds these narrative mazes and, crucially, how he grounds those, frankly, dizzying structures with this commitment to realism that you just don't see much anymore, not in Hollywood today.
It's a spectacular balancing act, really. I mean, Nolan's rightly seen as an auteur because he's always exploring different ways to manipulate story time, and the viewer's experience of that time.
And it's not just flair, is it? Things like embedding narratives or cross-cutting different time frames.
Oh, no. For him, they're fundamental. It's baked into the structure from the start. It's a core commitment.
So the origin point for all this temporal architecture, the kind of blueprint, you'd have to say it starts right back at the beginning with Memento.
Yeah, Memento is probably the purest expression of subjective time he's done. The sources really emphasize how it's engineered, like structurally engineered, to put you right inside Leonard Shelby's head.
And the way it does that is that famous intercutting, the two timelines. You've got the color scenes.
Which run backwards, yeah. Reverse chronological order, V down to A, essentially.
Right, from the supposed end back to the start. And then you have the black and white scenes.
Running forwards, 1 up to 22, standard chronological progression. Mm-hmm. And they meet structurally near the end of the film.
And this forced, non-sequential structure, that's the key, isn't it?
Absolutely. It stops the audience getting a stable viewpoint. It simulates Leonard's anterograde amnesia, that constant feeling of disorientation, living in what they call a perpetual present.
Yeah, because you're piecing it together with him, experiencing that frustration. But okay, the complexity didn't stop there. If Memento fractured one person's timeline, Dunkirk uses time to create this massive, sustained feeling of intensity.
What's so interesting about Dunkirk is how deliberately unbalanced the timescales are. Nolan built the film around 3 completely different lengths of time playing out simultaneously.
Right, you've got the air, which is just 1 hour of action.
And then the sea, covering a whole day.
And the mole, the beach, that condenses an entire week.
Yeah, and the cross-cutting between these 3 parallel but totally different timelines creates this incredible, almost unbearable mounting tension.
It feels less like editing and more like an audio illusion or something.
People compare it to a Shepard tone in music. That sound that seems to rise and rise forever but never actually gets higher.
Ah, okay.
Nolan uses the cross-cutting between these different points in time to emphasize the effective arcs, the feeling of danger, the intensity, rather than just a simple A to B causal story. The feeling of peril takes priority over strict chronology.
Which makes total sense for that film.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we get to maybe the peak of his time games. Tenet, the palindrome narrative.
Tenet really pushes it. It takes time manipulation and tries to ground it in, theoretical physics, this concept of inversion.
Where entropy reverses for people and objects, letting them move backwards through time based on the second law of thermodynamics, apparently.
Exactly, and the sheer logistics of showing that on a physical set, it's mind-boggling.
Yeah, the research mentioned actors training for months, learning to walk backwards, talk backwards, even throw a punch backwards.
Just to sell those inverted scenes without leaning totally on digital effects.
That level of physical commitment from the actors is something else.
It really shows his whole ethos, doesn't it? He's demanding this physical reality, even when he's depicting something as abstract as time flowing backwards. That cerebral timeline stuff needs absolute practicality on set to land properly.
Which brings us perfectly to pillar number 2, that physics of realism. Nolan's famous for his, let's call it, anti-CGI mandate.
Yeah, he really minimizes computer-generated stuff. Prefers practical effects, shooting on film stock. He thinks CGI feels a bit like animation, maybe a bit safe. was the quote.
Right. He only uses digital effects to, like, enhance things that were already actually photographed in camera.
And this dedication leads to some of the most jaw-dropping real-world stunts in modern movies. I mean, think about The Dark Knight, that massive 18-wheeler flipping end over end in downtown Chicago.
Yeah, that wasn't digital.
No, done live. They used a huge piston under the trailer, set off by TNT.
I read the only CGI was basically painting out the piston mechanism afterwards.
Exactly. And it goes beyond the big set pieces. The hospital explosion with the Joker walking away.
That was a real demolition, wasn't it? An old candy factory.
A 4-story former candy factory, yeah.
Yeah.
Blown up for real. Even smaller things like the pencil trick scene.
Oh, yeah?
Done practically. A stuntman did it, took 22 takes to get it right.
Wow. That commitment to real physics, that's why his action has that weight, that bite.
Totally. And then you look at Inception. That film feels like it's just built on layers and layers of practical magic.
The spinning hallway fight with Joseph Gordon-Levitt, everyone remembers that. No green screen there.
Not a bit. They literally built a giant rotating centrifuge set, a massive rig.
The actor had to train for 2 weeks.
Yep, just to handle the disorientation. He apparently sang Bach silently to himself to hit his marks while the whole room was spinning.
Incredible. And the train crashing through the street.
They built a full-size fake locomotive on an 18-wheeler chassis and drove it down the street. Just built it and did it.
Building reality to sell the unreality of the dream.
Precisely. But maybe the peak of this practical obsession is Tenet. Crashing a real, actual Boeing 747 into an airport hangar.
Why go that far?
Well, it speaks to this fascinating kind of production logic he has. The team actually figured out it was more efficient and maybe even cheaper.
Cheaper. To crash a real plane.
Yeah, somewhere between $50,000 and $100,000 to buy a decommissioned 747 and film the sequence for real, compared to the cost and complexity of doing it all with high-end digital effects.
That's kind of mind-blowing. The cost-benefit analysis favored reality over digital. That's a huge takeaway from his playbook.
It really is.
And my favorite example of this practical problem-solving, it's got to be from Dunkirk. Getting that sense of scale, the 400,000 soldiers, they only had 6,000 extras.
Right. So how do you fill the beach? The sources say they used, well, basically cardboard cutouts.
Seriously, cardboard soldiers.
Yeah, fences made of cardboard cutouts of actors positioned way off in the distance for the background beach shots. It's an old-school trick, but on a massive scale. Maximum presence, minimum digital duplication.
That's brilliant, actually. And then there's Interstellar, the legendary stories from that shoot.
Oh, yeah. Planting 500 acres of real corn.
Spending $100,000 on it and then selling the crop for a profit afterwards.
Talk about production value. But the realism went way beyond farming. For Gargantua, the black hole, the science was incredibly rigorous.
He brought in Kip Thorne, the theoretical physicist.
Yeah, to develop a whole new visual effects renderer based on Einstein's actual equations.
And the simulations they created were so accurate.
They actually led to new scientific papers being published. That's filmmaking literally contributing to astrophysics.
Amazing. And on set, instead of just green screens everywhere,
They used giant LED screens projecting images of space, stars, the black hole itself. So the actors had real light interacting with them, real reflections in their helmets.
giving authentic reactions, which resulted in way fewer VFX shots than usual for a space movie, right? Like 700 versus maybe 1,500 or 2,000.
Exactly. All stemming from that commitment to the practical.
And this whole philosophy, this devotion to the physics of the real world, it culminates most recently with Oppenheimer, recreating the Trinity test.
The first nuclear detonation.
Without CGI. He insisted he needed that beautiful and terrifying quality you only get from real-world imagery.
So you see this pattern. He builds these complex timeline structures, grounds them utterly in practicality. But it all seems to serve that final pillar, identity, the subjective maze of the self.
Right, because if the external world he shows us is so intensely physically real, it somehow makes the internal struggles of the characters feel even more potent, more fragile, maybe.
Yeah, his work is constantly exploring subjective experience, how memory gets distorted, protagonists grappling with this slippery nature of identity.
And they're often driven by really powerful, raw emotions, aren't they? Guilt, loneliness, obsession.
Definitely. The sources point out how the complexity of his films, it kind of appeals directly to our subconscious. It makes us feel the character's negative emotions. Let's circle back to Memento and some of the psychoanalytic thinking around it.
The idea being that Leonard's amnesia isn't just physical trauma from the head injury.
Right. It's suggested it might also be an unconscious thing, a psychological shield, basically.
A shield against what?
Against the memory of accidentally killing his wife with an insulin overdose. a memory too painful to consciously retain.
Wow. So the amnesia protects him from his own guilt.
That's the theory. And it goes deeper. The story he keeps telling himself about Sammy Jenkins, the other guy with amnesia, the analysis suggests that's actually Leonard's own story. He's projected his own shameful experience onto this other person, Sammy, to kind of absolve himself, to maintain the fiction he needs to live.
So the narrative is a construct to manage unbearable guilt. That ambiguity, that uncertainty about what's real, that feels central to his whole method.
Totally. He builds these mazes, like you said, and throws us right in there with the characters.
Yeah, he avoids what he called the God's eye view, right? Where the audience knows more than the characters.
Exactly. He wants us in the maze, too. Questioning what we're seeing, trying to figure out who or what to trust. We become the detective, even when maybe there's no single truth to find.
It seems like for Nolan, the objective facts might be solid. That's the practicality pillar. But the way characters interpret and remember those facts, their subjective reality, that's what's really slippery. That's the identity pillar.
Well put. And the ambiguity he often leaves at the end. Think of the spinning top in Inception. It's deliberate.
He doesn't give you the easy answer.
No, because he wants you, the viewer, to wrestle with it, to interpret the evidence and arrive at your own conclusion. The engagement continues long after the movie ends.
So pulling it all together then, what's the core of the Nolan playbook? It seems like his genius is weaving together that really complex cerebral timeline architecture.
The gut-level, visceral truth of practicality.
To create these incredibly deep psychological portraits of identity.
Yeah. He makes these huge, spectacular films that are actually, at heart, really intimate stories about fractured minds under extreme pressure.
And every time a character is facing some impossible time paradox or a huge physical challenge,
We feel it too, because we're also trying to piece together the timeline, trying to believe what we're seeing because it looks so real.
Before we wrap up, there's one last connection that feels really relevant. It's about his philosophy beyond just making the films.
His advocacy for the cinema experience.
Yeah.
And physical media.
Exactly. That commitment to the tangible, it doesn't stop when the cameras stop rolling. He argues pretty strongly for physical media like 4K Blu-rays over streaming.
Because it preserves the filmmaker's control
Right.
over the color, the brightness, the way it's meant to look.
Right. And here's the final provocative thought for you to chew on, directly tying into this. He said physical media ensures that, quote, no evil streaming service can come steal it from you.
Oh, okay.
His commitment to tangible reality, whether it's a real truck flip, 500 acres of corn, or that disc you own, seems absolute. If you won't let digital compromise his vision on set.
He's certainly not going to let it compromise how you experience that vision at home. It all connects back.
It really does.